Old. Hello, Lily. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. You want to know who is the leader of this pack. Well, Lily, I, at the moment, am not sure who the leader is of this pack. And the reason why I say I'm not sure is because this pack has just gone under a huge change. So what's happened, Lily, is that a new male has come and the pack has split from the original pack. So there's some members have gone one way, some have gone another way. And so at the moment, they're all just kind of trying to establish themselves within the pack. They're all trying to work out who is who. And you'll find that because it's not the time when they breed and have puppies, it means that they're all kind of just running around trying to feed one another at this stage. But as that is happening, Lily, so you're going to find that a male and a female are going to come to the fore, and they're going to be the individuals that start leading the pack and become the alpha pair. I would surmise, or I think, Lily, that the male with the collar is a fairly dominant individual within it. He's a much older dog than a lot of the others that we have in here, and so I would imagine that he might be the alpha male. As for the alpha female, I'm not 100% sure just yet. There is a female in this group. Well, there was. I haven't seen her yet today. She has very white feet, so we used to call her Socks, and she might be in here, and she seems to be quite a dominant female, because when I've watched this pack in the past, I've seen that the males tend to hound her quite a lot and tend to be around her, and she tends to get up with the collared male, and when those two get up, the rest of the pack seems to respond. But at this stage, it doesn't seem as though there is a clear alpha male and female just yet. Now, Lily, what's really interesting with these dogs, and hopefully we'll see it later, so I hope that you stay watching, is that when there's not an alpha male or female yet in the pack, and when they're not quite established as in terms of who is dominant, you'll find that the dogs are all going to stand up and they're going to start sneezing, and the sneezing is like a voting process, so it's like a little conversation as to where they're going to go and what they're going to do. So hopefully later they'll do that, and it's amazing to watch, and maybe then we can work out who is more dominant than the others. But while we try and sit patiently with our dogs and see if they do wake up, let's go back across to Jamie and the Masai Mara with those beautiful lions and see if they're having just as much of a nap after their meal.
They are definitely not having a nap at all, and in fact your timing is perfect, because this little one has been doing the leopard crawl, or in this case the lion cub crawl, sneaking closer and closer and closer to this lioness, inch by inch by inch, just trying to see whether there's any chance, just peeking over the top of the grass. Is there any way, is there going to be a morsel left for me? Could I snatch it from her? Glaring into the rain. Yes, you. Are you going to give it a try? No. Probably wise. But the lioness has got to watch from two angles, because she's got the little cub at the back there, and then the larger male. The larger male that's crept up a little bit closer to the other side of her. So she's really got to have eyes in the back of her head at the moment, because as soon as one distracts her, then the others go for it. Now David, you want to know if the lions have dens nearby, and the answer is no, they do not anymore. So it's only when cubs are quite young that lions will keep them in a den site. And the Angama's den site, actually, funny that you should ask, this was not far away from where we are at all, probably about 1 kilometer or so away, give or take, possibly even less, depending on which particular den site they were using. So yes, they did have a den site. Oh, somebody's trying it again, getting closer. They did have a den site here, but now that the cubs are older than about 4 months old, they are big enough and strong enough to keep up with the rest of the pride, and so they don't have any den site at all, which means they are out and exposed to rain, just like the rain that we're experiencing now. There's nowhere they can go. They can't check into a halfway house or a hotel or a den site. What have you found yourself? A piece of grass? Something else to play with? Going to sneak around the back, see what he can do. Rain's starting to get hard again. We've so far managed to avoid putting our rain covers down, which is quite impressive actually. So far we've done quite well, but it's come at the the expense of Jahawi's seating, which if he needs to film anything on the left of the vehicle, he's going to find himself with a rather damper bottom. So I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to move away from the lions and put our rain covers down. We're going to send you across while we do that to Brent, who apparently has a rhino off in the distance.
Well, we've been searching long and hard for a rhino, and I don't think we're going to have a good view of it for too much longer. Not because the rhino is in a bad spot, but because the weather is turning foul very quickly. And it looks to be a black rhino bull. And there we go. But we are in this tiny little circle where the rain isn't. We've got rain coming in from all directions at this very moment in time. There he is. Busy scent marking against that termite area. Hello, mister. Quite nice and relaxed. Right out in the open near the Samaki swamp. Now, remember, this is 100% live, coming to you from the Masai Mara in Kenya. And if you have any questions about these fantastical beasts, whether they be armored like the rhino or full of teeth and claws like the lions, hashtag Safari Live on whatever platform you're watching is the best way to get hold of us. Now, you can see he's sort of just contemplating what's going on at the moment, listening carefully. Can probably hear my voice. Do you hear my voice, Black Rhino? Yes, I think you do. Had a nice mud wallow at some point today, so giving him a bit of protection from the biting insects that are out in force at this time of the year in the Mara. They are such incredible beasts, absolutely wonderful things to watch. Well, JT, congratulations. JT says, this is my first rhino sighting on Safari Live. Well, there we go, JT. I'm very happy you are able to share your first rhino sighting with us. It is stunning. Now, from what I spotted him from quite a long way away, marching along. Matt is wondering, what predators do rhinos have? Now, very few. They're being very big, and obviously having that pointy horn can cause a bit of trouble for any predator that decides to try take them on. But lions are the only predator that will sometimes take on a wounded rhino or a young rhino. Otherwise, hyenas also, again, very unusually might try to take on a wounded or young animal. But other than that, they are pretty safe from everything else. Sorry, I thought I spotted something. I just popped the binoculars up for a second. Checking down to Samaki Swamp. The waterbuck looked a little bit spooked, but I can't see anything there. I think they might have been spooked by some birds taking off. Now, Emma has asked a very interesting question, and that is, why is the black rhino more rare than the white rhino? Now, Emma, in the past, in the 60s and 70s, it was actually the other way around. So the white rhino was far more rare. The black rhino had a historically much larger distribution through far more diverse sort of habitats to the white rhino, and they have now due to poaching and loss of habitat and loss of big wild areas, they have lost a lot of that habitat and therefore a loss of their range. Of course, poaching has also played an incredibly large part in their loss of numbers. So the black rhino occurred in a far sort of greater area. And I've got a nice little map to show you the historical black rhino range. Oh, that's not going to work. Oh, sorry, I pushed the wrong button. Here we go. Okay, So the green is the historical, well-known black rhino range. So as you can see, it stays out of the Congo Basin forests and also out of the highlands of Ethiopia. And then across what you call the Sahel region, which is the big savanna region above the Congo Basin forests, all the way through into the Sahara. Now, probably, what am I thinking? Probably 30,000 years ago or so, the black rhino range would have extended right the way into that, darn it, sorry, I keep pushing the wrong button. Right the way into the what is now true desert in the Sahara, because that used to be full of grass, and it was a lush open grass, and probably quite similar to what the Kalahari is now. Now, if we go down, this spinning thingy-mabob, I don't want to search again. Sorry, 1 second. I keep pushing the wrong bimming button, my fat fingers. Okay, there we go, we're back. Okay, we're back. So there we go. Now that is the current black rhino distribution in Africa. And you can see it's a lot smaller. That black area up there in West Africa is where they are extinct. Now, fortunately, they have been reintroduced into Botswana, Zambia, and Malawi. And there's more than likely probable black rhino still in northern Mozambique. Southern Tanzania, it doesn't show here, but I know for a fact that there are no black rhino left in southern Tanzania. I was unfortunately probably one of the last people to ever see a black rhino in the Selous Game Reserve before they were unfortunately poached out. But northern Tanzania, Kenya still has. Okay, whoa, the rhino's on the move. Now, of course, Mafuta is asking a question about rhinos and their calves. So Mafuta is wondering, why do black rhino calves run behind while white rhino calves run in front? There's a couple of different theories. One of the theories, which I'm not 100% convinced of, is that, well, the black rhino has, which I probably think is probably true, has probably better eyesight than white rhino. And so the mother is able to see. Now, young rhino calves, as I said, it's a theory that I haven't researched in depth enough to, but I think it might be a bit of a tall story. That the white rhino calves, when they were younger, their heads aren't as heavy, so they're able to lift their heads quite easily and see quite well. As a white rhino ages, it says the optic nerve stretches, therefore its vision becomes worse as it gets older. So when it's young, its vision is better. Therefore, they run in the front, where there's the black rhino mother's vision is still quite good. This is, however, a boy. And saw him scent marking from a distance. He's found some nice little, probably puzzle bush or whatnot to chew on. Lisa's wondering, what is scarier, a charging black rhino or a charging bull elephant? Well, it all depends on the black rhino or the elephant. In both cases, you can normally stop the charge with a well-aimed shout or bang on the side of your car or clap your hands. I don't know. For me, I'd say probably a proper full elephant charge, just because they're so much bigger. Black rhino charges are incredibly scary, don't get me wrong. I've climbed a few trees to get out of their way in my years in the bush. But difficult. I would probably say that a big bull elephant in full charge is more scary. There's a young bull elephant in the background there, as well as waterbuck. It's quite nice, and this is really nice to see these rhinos right out in the open. And they do like to come down towards the Samaki swamp at this time of the day. And there are these tiny little puzzle bushes and caper bushes that are growing. And even though it looks like they're grazing grass, they're not. In fact, they are eating bushes that are just popping through the grass. See, there we go. Archer's found some bushes growing along. That's exactly what he's after. So the ancestors of both our black and white rhino were already present in Africa about 10 million years ago. and they had a common ancestral species that they both diverged from. And of course, it was quite a easy, not easy, but you can see why the evolutionary diversion from their common ancestor happened. So one focused on eating trees and bushes, while the other focused on eating, of course, grass. You can see, look at his ears. I love how attentive. So, of course, their eyesight's not so great. So they do rely heavily on their smell and hearing to listen to potential threats or just what's going on around them in general. Well, he's found another little tasty treat. Now you can quite easily see the very distinct hooked lip on the black rhino. Wait, what was that behind him? Did you see that? That white there. Oh, it's a hippo in the mud. It's his tail splashing that made that little bit of movement there. So there's a hippo right in the swamp. There we go. You see the water splashing out. Now you can see how these hippos can disappear here. And of course, oh my goodness, Final Control is about to get very, very wet, and so are we. I'm just going to reverse so you can have a quick look. So, and Jamie as well. I think Jamie's in that area there somewhere. But that, oh dear, driving home is going to be fun today again. I think most of the roads are going to become not just bubbling brooks, but raging torrents. I mean, that is proper rain there, blocking out the escarpment completely. And it's probably on the main road now, below the escarpment. It hasn't quite got to Final Control. Final Control's in... Wait, let me just get my hand up here. Sorry. The Final Control is in that little valley there. So it is still coming towards Final Control, but it is probably already reached where Jamie is. I'm not sure. Okay, well, I'm going to try I'm going to try outrun the storm, but I think the game might be up already. But while Archie and I try to decide how damp we want to be this evening, let's go all the way 1,600 miles back to Tristan in South Africa with my favorite animal, lichen.
Well, as you can see, our dogs are still very sleepy. We've repositioned. You can see now what I was talking about those full tummies and that heavy breathing. That is a very, very round tummy that we've got there. And these dogs are just going to take it easy, I think, for now. It's still too warm. The one thing, though, is that you can see with dogs is that even though they go on a hunting session in the mornings or evenings, is that not every single one of the dogs will get an equal amount of food. If you look at the third dog at the back, very round tummy. Look at the dog in the front in comparison. Its tummy is much smaller, and so there will be dogs within this grouping that are still hungry, and that is why they will hunt again this evening. Even though one dog might be full, there are others that are going to be looking for food, and so we'll have a situation where these guys are probably going to head out and hunt. The interesting thing, though, is that it seems to be all the older males are lying together by themselves on this right hand side. So this is a group of 4 males. These are all adult males, if you want to call it that. Remember that most of the wild dogs within our system, very seldom are wild dogs going to make it past 7 years old. So most of the older males, when we refer to older male dogs, we're talking about dogs that are over 3 years old, and all 3 or 4 of these guys are probably over that age. If you look at them, they all got quite thick collars of around their heads. You can obviously see the dog in the middle with the collar on it itself. And funny enough, I was just talking to VM about this. I actually was part of the team that put that collar on that dog, so I know that dog very well. I've handled and taken blood from that dog, and it was part of the distemper program. We did it quite far from here. That's why it's amazing that this dog has actually come into this area. Is that dog comes from quite far north of us, north of Open Gates in Ngala, which is, I mean, it's a long way away. And the movement for him to get here was really interesting. I was shown the satellite GPS tracking collar data the other day, and he ran from Ngala. He ended up going towards the Mozambican boundary, And then from the Mozambican boundary, he then started to shift back towards Manyeleti. From Manyeleti, he started to come back southwards, and then he eventually bumped into this pack. And that was when we saw him for the very first time that day. On Djuma was the first day that he had been recorded with this pack. So since then is how long he has been a part of this pack. That particular collar, if you're wondering how long it's been on, we collared that dog, I was just checking now, on the 12th of April. So that's how long that collar has been on that dog. Now it will be on probably for about 2 years, and the reason why is because it's part of the distemper rabies program. They are inoculating these dogs as much as they can for canine distemper, and so it takes a few updates of that inoculation, and so the tracking collar helps for him to be found, and the pack that he's within, or that pack that he's in, to be found. The problem is now is that he's not in the same pack that we originally collared him in. He's now in a different pack. Luckily though, that pack still does have a member that is collared. We collared 2 dogs that day, and so the other one with the collar is still part of that pack, and so they will be able to monitor both that pack and now even this pack as well, which is really great news. So interesting kind of how it all works. The funny thing is as I look at that collar now, it's amazing the wear and tear that has taken place on that particular collar in the last few months. When you first put these collars on, they are beautifully kind of made. They've got this wild dog pattern spray painted on them so that it tries to blend in a little bit better. But of course, being wild dogs and the life that they lead, all of the paint gets pulled off immediately, and it then goes back to its normal sort of state. You can see even the leather has kind of had wear and tear, and it's amazing actually how much they use it. So it's an interesting kind of process, and it's strange to think that I've actually kind of been up close to that dog. In some ways it really is quite an odd thing. And I think I've got a photo somewhere here of this particular dog when it was down and when it was being collared somewhere. In fact, actually I've got a very cool photo of our wild dog when he woke up. So it was an interesting situation when he woke up. What happened was he decided as he woke up to jump in the air, and he's almost become a kangaroo dog. So that's him way back in the day, jumping up and running off back to join his pack. Right, now while we sit with our endangered wild dogs, I believe Brent Leo Smith is probably with an animal that I really wish we would see more often here on Djuma, that is just as endangered as these guys.
Well, we've got about, I don't know, 8-9 minutes before the rain hits us. So while it's clear and beautiful, we decided to spend more time with this beautiful big black rhino bull. Now, one would think that the Mara was a perfect ecosystem for white rhinoceros, yet you only get black rhino here. And strange enough, white rhino never really occurred in this part of Africa. So black and white rhino split at about 4 to 5 million years ago. And what are those waterbucks seeing? Sorry, they're just looking very intently. I think they're just watching other waterbuck. And so the historic white rhino range of the northern white rhino, and of course the northern white rhino Sudan has been getting quite a lot of press recently, did not actually include Kenya. So it was the northern white rhino's natural distribution was northern Congo, southern Sudan, and western Uganda. Now, however, they are not there at the moment, well, especially in Congo and Sudan. There have been some introduced into Kenya and into Uganda, and there was a population of white rhinos that were probably on their way up from the southern population that used to occur just across the Zambezi River around Livingston and Victoria Falls, and there is a small reintroduced population there. However, it was a very tiny population. White rhino traditionally only occurred in those 3 Central African countries, and then the southern subspecies, South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. Now, there is a very, very valid reason for this. Now, even though the Mara is this glorious grassland that would be ideal for white rhino, for those different populations of white rhino to have moved into this area from where they sort of specialized, they have to go through quite a lot of either forest or miombo woodland. both of which are not very good for white rhino at all. The grasses are not of a high nutrient value, so it would have been very difficult for those two distinct populations to spread into the Mara. Not to say they wouldn't have got here eventually, but it's very difficult to say that now, of course, because the whole of Africa has completely changed in terms of the human element and how we have changed the ecosystem and with farming and all those type of things, damming and all sorts of things like that. So I can show you the historical, I keep pushing the, there we go. So there we go. So those are the historic. So this is pre the influence of man decimating the rhino populations. Those are your two white rhino populations. So you can see the southern white rhino, far more widespread, and of course there's a lot more open grasslands in these areas. And you can see they didn't push too far beyond that boundary there in South Africa was the Orange River, which is a very big river. So across Botswana, Zimbabwe, into southern Angola, Namibia, and the majority of Mozambique. Now, Mozambique, this top corner of Mozambique, Tanzania, and the majority of Zambia are all that Miombo woodland I was talking about that is really not great for your grazing species. And even the grazing species you find in that Miombo woodland are quite small. Now, this top part of DRC and South Sudan is magnificent grasslands. And unfortunately, that area is very, very hard hit by poaching and war. So that's one of the biggest problems when it came to conserving the northern white rhino was actually Joseph Kony. That is sort of core, I've forgotten his name, People's, I can't remember, but Kony, who ran that absolutely despicable sort of basically war militia that caused absolute havoc over that area amongst the people. So it made any conservation in that area very, very difficult. So, of course, this is Kenya here. Now, I'm just going to go out a bit so we can see. Now, this is where white rhino have... I keep doing that. What have I done? Oh, there we go. Sorry, my fat fingers are not good. There we go. So this is where white rhino have been reintroduced or introduced. So you can see South Africa. Oh, anyway, let me try that one more time. So there we go. South Africa in the brown is the only country that has managed to keep rhino alive for the whole of the period. They've never been extinct or needed to be reintroduced into South Africa. They have been reintroduced into parts of South Africa where they might have become locally extinct, and especially now with the advent of the private game reserve, a lot of private rhino owners are around. Now, that Zambia, they've been reintroduced into parts of Zambia, but traditionally they only occurred in that bottom section right on the border of Botswana. And then, of course, the northern white rhino has been put into Kenya and into protected areas in Uganda. So very, very interesting there. So, isn't that fascinating? Now, of course, there's been reintroduction of black rhino into Central Africa recently, and there's Yuri and Pippa from Djuma actually played a very important part in the reintroduction of black rhino into Rwanda, into Akagera National Park. So that's quite an interesting story there. So African parks, and they try to keep that northern black rhino subspecies, even when they were sent to South Africa for protection on the private game farms and game breeding facilities. They've tried to make sure that the genetics of the northern black rhino and the southern black rhino weren't mixed, because there was always the plan, when things were more stable, to reintroduce that northern subspecies back into areas where it occurred naturally. Now let's give you one last look at that rhino. And I'm just keeping a close eye on the rain behind me, because it is starting to drip and the wind is starting to howl. But the rain, of course, is not going to faze that big boy in the slightest. And another animal that probably wouldn't mind the rain today, especially if they've got big fat bellies, are the African wild dogs with Tristan.
Well, we have been sitting with some rather sleepy dogs, but all kinds of chaos is erupting just to the north of us. And I say erupting because it is an alert fiesta. There's termites that are coming out of the ground, and there's all kinds of birds that are flying all over the place. In fact, most of them are migratory birds. So there's European bee-eaters, European rollers. There was a Wahlberg's eagle in here, a lesser spotted eagle. I've seen cuckoos. It is just birds everywhere. And as these alerts are coming up off the ground, so the birds are flying in and grabbing them. There's also the grey hornbills, as you can see there. They're in amongst the whole lot. There's starlings. So it is just an absolute feast for all of these different birds as these alerts are coming out of the ground. It's amazing actually to watch, and it started out with just a few little bee-eaters. There was a few bee-eaters that were kind of flying around, and as they started to get excited and chirp and go crazy, so all of these other birds started to arrive, and it seems to be kind of tailing off a little bit now. At one point there, the whole sky was filled with birds that were flying around all over the place. So it seems as though everything's just quietened down. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to move a little bit forward so that if they do start going again, we'll be able to probably have a little bit of a better view. But it was amazing just to watch how quickly that whole process happened and how efficient birds are at finding places to find food. You can see the dogs are completely unperturbed by all of this. They don't care too much for all of the birds that are flying around, and then really too worried about the fact that there was a massive eruption of food items in the form of little winged insects. You can see they're far more kind of relaxed about what's going on in life. But it might mean that they will hatch again at some point. The interesting part about it is, and what fascinates me when you watch these kind of hatches of birds, is that you'll have a system where you'll find birds like Wahlbergs and lesser spotted eagles will often hunt other birds, but yet in a situation like this, because there's such an amount of food, all of these birds will just feed together and not actually worry about those bigger eagles, even though they probably would have tried to dive bomb them in a normal situation. But our dogs, Taka, you wondering if sorry, I've actually forgotten your question now, Taka. I do apologize. Taka is 5 years old and I've completely forgotten what he's had to say. So Megs, if you can repeat that for me. Sorry, I was so busy on the bird tangent and so excitable about all the birds that I saw that I forgot what the question was, which does happen. I'm getting old at the end of the day, and so these things do happen. Taka, so you're wondering if the collar hurts the dog. I thought that's what you asked, but I just wanted to double check. Now, Taka, with these collars, it shouldn't hurt the dog in any way. If it's hurting the dog, then it's been put on wrong. So when they put the collar on, you'll put the collar around, and then you try and put 2 fingers between the collar and the dog's fur, and that means that the collar is at least on securely enough that the dog won't pull it off and just grab it on branches and those kind of things, but it's also got enough space that if it's eating or if it's moving, that it's not being restricted by that collar. So no, it doesn't hurt the dog, and it shouldn't hurt the dog. If the collar is too tight, then you'll see that the fur will push up against that collar, and the collar will almost be around, and you'll find the dog will walk around and it will almost make these kind of coughing, choking sounds, which means that it is on then too tight. But this particular collar itself is quite loose, I know, because like I say, I was there when it was put on, Taka, and you can actually move that collar from his front legs all the way to his ears. It moves quite a bit on that particular area, and so it's not very, it doesn't look as tight as what, well, it's not as tight as what it looks, and so it actually doesn't hurt him in any way whatsoever. It's interesting how dogs react to them, because the first moment he kind of trotted around and he was scratching at it a little bit, and then after a day or two they're actually quite fine with it. They don't worry about it too much at all, and then they'll run around no problem, and you'll see he doesn't actually even pay any attention to it whatsoever. I'm pretty sure obviously he'd prefer it not being on, and but when you've got a situation where an animal is so endangered, you need to be able to monitor them, and particularly with this canine distemper, because at the end of the day, distemper is such a bad virus for these dogs that we need to be able to get rid of it and need to be able to see if we can vaccinate for it. Right, now our birds have all dissipated, but Jamie Patterson has found a bird of her own, and it's another bird that I'm quite jealous that we don't see more of down here in South Africa.
Well, I found you a picture of a bird that we saw a little bit earlier, because at the moment I can't really show you anything except the rain, because it is absolutely pouring down once again. It might be nice, Megs, if you want to turn up the ambience. We can have a little rain on the roof sound, you know, listen to the sound of the roof flapping above us as it comes loose at the seams. You know, all of those things are pretty atmospheric. But that is the pallid harrier. We saw the male, and the female is below it. those are the birds. That's the bird that Jahawi just managed to catch on camera before the lions started hunting and everything basically turned to chaos. The pallid harrier male on the top and the female on the bottom, and as you can see, the female is completely different in terms of colouring. It looks quite similar to a Montagu's harrier, which looks like that. Very similar, but a bit lighter in colour with a much longer tail when compared to the length of the wings, and then a black band. The pallid harrier doesn't have that black band over there. So we see both of them. We see Montagues and we see pallid harriers in this area. And this is the only time I think I've ever got a pallid harrier on camera. I'm almost tempted to say the weather's alright now, but I've said that so many times this afternoon, and then it keeps swinging back around and hitting us full force. And I don't understand. Brent can't be that far from us. Apparently his weather's fine and he's got a lovely view of two very large, very grey animals.
Herd of ellies in the background. Now, generally rhinos and elephants will ignore each other, but in certain cases they are elephants, not so much in the Mara, but in places where there is a serious competition for water, elephants have been known to kill rhinos. And in one particular park in South Africa, the Pilanesberg, there was a naughty group of elephant bulls who went on a rhino killing spree, actually, killing both black and white rhino. Now, as most of you know, the scientific name, I should hope that you do know it, for the black rhino is Diceros bicornis. But of course, old Carl Linnaeus, back in the good old days when he was sort of sorting out the taxonomy of all the animals, dubbed the black rhino a Rhinoceros bicornis, which bicornis means two-horned. And it was quite funny because it was actually an accident, because it was based off the skull of an Indian rhinoceros, which has obviously got a single horn, that a collector had artificially stuck a second horn onto. And it took a while before this was only sorted out. And the black rhino was quite often more well known before the white rhino, obviously, of course, because it had a much bigger distribution. And the white rhino was only officially noted as a separate species in 1812, so quite a long time. So for many years, so probably for close on 20 or 30 years, there was only thought to be one species. Oh, there's two little ellie balls having a go at each other in the background. There was thought to be only one species of rhino in Africa, the double-horned rhino. And of course, as you know, both our rhino species in Africa have double horns. So quite interesting that the original double-horned rhino, and where the black rhino gets the bicornis of its scientific name from, comes from an mistake. And where some person stuck a separate horn onto a skull of a single-horned Indian rhinoceros. Kathy is wondering if I've ever seen a rhino fight. I have, Kathy. I've seen some pretty spectacular rhino fights, both black and white rhino fights. And they can be very ferocious and go on for a long time. And generally it is between the males, and you will even see male rhinos push out and really attack young male rhinos. But it's quite interesting because they will, for quite a long period of time, accept a young male rhino, not lion, within their territory. But it's when that young male starts showing signs of scent marking, that means he could be a potential threat to the mating of the dominant male in the area, that the male will now all of a sudden decide that it is time for that one to go. And outside, of course, of the terrible poaching that happens of the rhinos, that traditionally the biggest killer of rhinos would be other rhinos fighting. Even males kill females accidentally sometimes when they're trying to separate them from their calves, if they're interested in mating. But we're going to now brave the weather and head slowly back towards the escarpment, where it is still raining, but we've been lucky enough that it has sort of petered out a little bit, but it is always incredibly special to be able to spend time with an animal like a black rhino, and specifically in an area like this where we can see them so well out in the open. Now, my good friend Scotty D is out and about at Djuma, and he's got a bird that every frog in the Lowveld is absolutely petrified of.
Hello everyone, it sounds like you're having a wonderful afternoon with all the other guides, and especially with not only the black rhino but also the wild dogs. We found another endangered animal, the saddle-billed stork, who's just sat himself down and he's having a big yawn. How cool is that? He's had a long day at the office and he's literally just walked out of a small pond that he was feeding on. My name's Scott, and sorry I got out a little bit late this afternoon. It's because we had some technical issues. I'm teamed up with Ferg on camera, and it's not only the two of us, we've got a third passenger. It's my new friend. I'm not sure what his name is yet. I'm thinking of something like Mandla, which means power or strength in Zulu. And, sorry, the sun is blinding me here, so let me swivel my head around here. Now, this is a praying mantid. He's a beautiful specimen. And interestingly, he is injured. He's... sorry. Good. So, he's a little bit injured, and I've noticed that his middle pair of legs aren't working, so he's having to improvise and use his front legs as well as his back legs to walk. Now, usually they'll just use their front legs for seizing their prey. They are incredibly quick. Oh, there we go, those front legs. And now you can maybe even see those little tooth-like structures which help latch onto their prey when they do strike out with those raptorial forelegs. So Ferg actually found him, and we're going to find a nice green bush to put him on now and leave him be. Looks like he's... Sure, what are you doing? Doing some cleaning. Good. Alrighty. Now, we've come into this area because there were some reports of a young male leopard called Hosanna who was heading into this general area this morning. Haven't found any tracks of him. We have been sitting here patiently for about 15 minutes now and haven't heard any alarm calls or any signs that he is in the area. It's not to say that he isn't, but that's what our kind of plans were for the afternoon. I'm hoping to spend some time with leopard. Having spent a couple of months up in the Masai Mara, I have not been lucky enough to see as many leopards as I would have liked to, so I am hoping to try and catch up and cash in on the joys of the Sabi sands and all the wonderful leopard sightings that we do enjoy here. It'll make for an incredible drive if you manage to see wild dog, black rhino, elephants with Jamie and a leopard with me, but the clock is against us, so we're going to have to act quickly. I mustn't forget about old Mandla here. I think there's a nice little bush we'll place him onto. Okay, Mandla, it's been real, buddy, but it's time to set you free. Good luck with those funny legs of yours. You seem to be doing a good job. Cool. Now, we are going to drop into a low-lying riverbed now, and because I haven't been spending much time here, I'm not too sure if we are going to lose signal or not. It kind of sometimes depends on the day, on the vehicle, but hopefully we will be able to take you on a little bit of a cruise through the Mulwati riverbed system. It's one of my favorite places to explore on the Djuma property. But we'll head on in here and test the signal. We are going to send you back to Tristan and the wild dogs.
Well, And the dogs are still, like I say, fast asleep. They are not yet waking up. It's still warm out here. We're sitting in a bit of sunny area, and the sun still has a bit of a bite to it. So I would imagine we're going to need that sun just to go down a little bit before they start to wake up. I didn't expect them to get going first thing in the afternoon, but you never know with dogs, so it's always better to rather be with them than not with them, and rather just be patient and spend some time watching them kind of pant away their full bellies than being away and then they get up and go and you lose them. So that's why we've come a little bit earlier, but it's all nice just to actually sit with the dogs. It's a beautiful evening on Djuma. Since we've had that rainy day that we had a few days ago, yesterday and today have just been the most wonderful days. The sun has been out. It's not been excessively hot, but there is a lot of green lushness going on. There's a few insects that are out. Birds are chirping. And so it is a beautiful time of the day to be out and about on the reserve. And sitting with wild dogs and just kind of taking in the scenery and watching what goes on around you is never the worst way to spend an afternoon. Preston, you're wondering if the dogs cry tears. Now, Preston, who's 8 years old, now I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, Preston. I don't think so. I've never seen a dog cry tears, and when it has been sad, I've never seen one kind of anyway having tears coming out at all, whether it be sad or happy or anything like that. What they will do sometimes is they do sometimes get a little bit of liquid that comes off of their eye, but that's normally if there's a lot of dust in their eyes. Like us, when we get a lot of dust and dirt, then our eyes start to what we call water, and that just helps to clean the eye and make sure that the eye doesn't have too much in it. But I haven't actually seen them physically crying myself, and so I don't think that they do. I don't think they cry like people would or like humans do, Preston. I think it's more a situation that it's just there to help keep the eye clean and keep those eyes from having dirt and dust and anything else that might collect inside. It's interesting though, it's an interesting question, because maybe some of you can help us. Maybe some of you have more information as to whether wild dogs are capable of crying. I've never read anything about them crying, but it's possible at the end of the day. There's some weird and wonderful facts in the animal kingdom, and sometimes things like this can happen, but I doubt that it is the case. I don't think we can say that they cry like us as people. I think it's more a case that it's done just out of a natural reaction to keep that eye as clean as possible. Carol, you're wondering about the differences between wild dogs and jackals, given that Brent had a jackal earlier. Well, Carol, they are actually in two different groupings. They're not part of the same family. Jackals are much smaller than wild dog, so you'll find that they'll probably stand, I would say, up to about just underneath the shoulder height of a wild dog. They're also a lot shorter if we look at the length of this animal. Wild dogs also have much bigger ears than what the jackals have, and the way that they go about their business is very different. Jackals tend to form a pair, a monogamous pair that they'll pair together for life, and they'll move around and have their young ones, and then the young ones distribute away from them. Whereas wild dogs, as we can see here, are a pack animal where they'll have multiple different individuals that join together with an alpha pair within the pack, and they look after each other like that. So it's a bit different from the jackals in that regard. Also, habitat tends to play a bit of a role in things. We tend to find that our jackals tend to be, oh, is that an elephant making its way in? Well spotted, VM. So there we go. I was saying earlier maybe the Ellies will join us at the wild dogs, and there we have an Ellie right there. That actually might cause the dogs to wake up, which is really cool to see, and it's a young individual, so there might be more on their way out of this little thicket, and hopefully they're going towards Tambuti Dam, which is just behind us, and that will cause the dogs to stir a little bit just now. But back to the jackals. The jackals tend to be more open area animals, whereas the dogs we tend to find run all over the place. And so there's basic differences between the two of them. Like I said, a much smaller animal more than any else is the easiest way to spot the difference, and the dogs have a intricate coat pattern, whereas jackals, even though individuals have slight differences within the coats, most of them are fairly uniform in the way that they look. So there'll be a side striped jackal with that white stripe, or the black back, which has got the black saddle on its back, whereas dogs, it's all over the place. Right, well, let's wait and see how these Ellies move and whether the elephants are going to move up towards the wild dogs. And while we do that, I believe Jamie is still on her birding mission, and it seems as though she's got some more things to tell you about our feathered friends.
I want to tell you about the shikra, or at least that is essentially the extent of what I can do at the moment while we sit with our rain covers down. So earlier on we were asked about which birds we would be if we were birds. Sorry, that was pretty obvious. Which birds we would be if we were birds? I said a shikra. I don't know if Brent ever answered the story. I'm sure he'd say something like a martial eagle. Joey, I never asked you what you would be. Now, shikra, you can think about it for a second. Shikra is about this big. So it's about the size of this tablet, essentially. That's how big the shikra is, and it's small and agile. Do you have an answer, Joey? Pygmy falcon. Okay, so we're going for small, agile birds here, essentially. I've gone for shikra, and then Jahawi has gone for... I'm just going to have to quickly do a search, because I think it's not quite... Yeah, we want Harrier, Falcon. Pygmy falcons are really cute. Really, really very sweet. So that's what a pygmy falcon looks like. That's what Jahawi said he would be. The drawing doesn't quite do justice. Jahawi's just having a quiet giggle in the back there. Megan, what bird would Megs be? Megs would be... Meg said she'd be a peacock. A female peacock or a male peacock. Would you have the tail? Okay, male peacock. Meg says she'd be a male peacock. Okay. Can't argue with that one. I don't think I need to show you what a picture of what a peacock looks like, though. Pretty sure you know what a peacock looks like. Okay. Right. I'm going to send you back over to Tristan in South Africa. He's had an amazing time with wild dogs. I'm so jealous. Off you go to spend more time with him.
Well, Jamie, I hope that you have a wonderful evening further. I think Jamie's probably starting to head back to home. Our dogs, unfortunately, though, are still fast asleep. I was hoping that they would get up. Our elephant caught a whiff of them and then hightailed it out of here. It did not even come and cause any trouble. It just went the opposite way and went running off. And so there's no chance of the Ellies at this stage waking them up. But you never know. Maybe in the last few minutes and they will kind of pop out. Now, unfortunately, we've had some gremlins here at Djuma, which means that we are not going to be continuing on as we normally do later in the afternoon. We are unfortunately going to have to end the show in the next few minutes because our TriCaster, or our technical problem, has kind of taken over, which is a bit of a shame, but at least we've been out and about for a short period of time. We've had a fairly successful afternoon, VM and I've actually loved it. We've had birds, we've had elephants, we've had wild dogs, and well, that for me is not the worst way to spend any time whatsoever. I'm hoping, though, that the dogs will stick around over the next few days. It would be lovely just to keep them over the weekend and down into the next week. It seems as though these dogs absolutely love TV time, because whenever we have TV shows around the corner, the dogs seem to come out of nowhere. I know Brent has had some incredible days with the wild dogs on TV, and so maybe they'll just stick around for the next week, which would be absolutely wonderful for all of us at the end of the day. It's great when we get to see these guys, and like I say, they're just such action-packed animals, and they're always up to something, and that's why we all love to spend so much time with them out here as well. So it's a situation where we've got, them around, and I believe another pack has just been located somewhere on the eastern side of Djuma, so 3 dogs there, and then injured dog has also just been around. So it's going to be interesting to see how the dynamics play out over the next couple of days. I would imagine that there's going to be lots of calling, lots of moving about, and hopefully we'll be able to show all of you as we go along. Now, unfortunately, it is that time of the day for us to say goodbye from a very restful pack of dogs and a rather nervous, scared elephant that ran off in the background. It's been an absolute pleasure having you guys out this afternoon. I'm sure Jamie, Brent have been loving having you guys with them, and from myself and Scott, we'll